Welcome to the Expansive Astrology Podcast, where we look at using astrology beyond the tropes and horoscopes to tune into the natural forces around us and within us, honoring our true nature to craft our future. I'm your host, Melissa, the Self-Care Witch, and I'm here to help you meet your magic. Without further ado, let's begin this week's episode with a tarot reading for the collective. Hi, welcome back. It's episode 21. And today we're talking about Libra season through the lens of the tarot. So we'll be speaking about the Justice card, the Empress card, the Suit of Swords, the Queen of Swords. Helps to give us a fuller picture of what this season is here to help us with. What this season brings with it, and the medicine, the invitations, so that we can really make the most of the magic that can be had here. First things first, the collective tarot reading, as always. I'm doing the soul check-in spread for the collective. It's a spread by Lindsay Mack. It's 4 cards meant to show us what's present here for us, what we can learn, and what we can anchor in with in the week ahead. It's one of my favorite ways to read. And since this is for the collective, take what you need and leave the rest, right? Some things might really resonate for you and some things might not hit home quite as much. And stay open to seeing how these things might play out for you in the week to come. Wow. Okay. So, present for us is the 4 of Cups, supported by Judgment. Kind of have some evaluative vibes, if you will. That's kind of what I'm grabbing from this. So the 4 of Cups, each of the Cups cards brings us into a relationship with our heart, with our emotions, with our intuition, with our innermost self in some way. And the 4 of Cups, in the traditional Pamela Coleman Smith illustration, we see a being sitting by a tree. They look kind of pensive. They're studying these 3 cups that are sitting before them. And it seems like they're oblivious to a 4th cup that is being seemingly like handed to them by this disembodied hand that we also see in the aces of each suit. So it looks like the universe is handing this person a 4th cup, and they are either refusing it or they don't see it or something's going on there, right? And oftentimes, kind of the traditional message with the 4 of Cups is, oh my God, look up. Like, don't miss it. You don't want to miss this 4th cup that's being offered to you. And as always, this is just like a Lindsay Mack fan podcast at this point, to be honest. But as always, Lindsay Mack is so brilliant in her interpretation, her soul tarot theory. She reminds us that we cannot miss what is meant for us. So this kind of like, almost like a fear-mongering type of interpretation that is kind of common with the 4 of Cups. She really throws that away and reassures us, like, you won't miss anything that's meant for you. She says we can sit here in the 4 of Cups as long as needed. It's not like we're going to miss something that is meant for us. Spirit will sit here and hold out its hand for as long as it takes. Right? So we can kind of like take that pressure off. And when we take that pressure off, what is left when we see this card? You know? If it's not about, hey, look at what else you could have, look at what else you could be doing, you don't want to miss something. If it's not about that, like, what is it? Soul Tarot says that the 4 of Cups is actually an ally in you choosing to honor your own timing with things. If the 4s all kind of invite some sort of boundary, this 4 has us drawing a clear boundary with our time, with our energy, and with what we are and are not available for. The person in this card is focusing on their 3 cups right now, really studying them, really taking their time to digest these 3 cups before moving on to the 4th. And that's okay. This card reminds us to take our time. It reminds us to say no when we need to focus on the 3 cups we already have. It also reminds us that that 4th cup will be available whenever that person is ready to reach out and grab it. Again, you will not miss anything that's meant for you. Never. Never, ever. And so are you okay with being where you are? Or can you be okay with being where you are? You know, can you kind of center in and choose to focus on those 3 cups? Or maybe it is time for you to look up and kind of turn away from your 3 cups and look at adding a 4th. Right? That's for you to determine where are you at in your 4 of Cups experience, you know. And either way, it's about being wise with the timing of our lives, being wise and accepting of the way our lives are unfolding, being accepting of how many cups we have and what they're filled with, you know, taking the proper time and energy and care for the cups that are in front of us before adding a 4th. And then when it's time to add a 4th, getting real about that, you know, and doing that. And this card this week is supported by the Judgment card. Now, I've said this before, and I'm always very honest when I pull this card. I am just very aware that I have a lot to learn when it comes to the Judgment card. This is the second to last card in the major arcana. So once we've reached the Judgment card, a lot has gone down, right? And so this is kind of the final step before we reach the World card, before we reach this graduation point, this like point of transformation or enlightenment, or this like higher state of being. This is the final step before we get there. So in the traditional Smith Rider-Waite deck, we see a pretty like biblical looking image of like this angel seemingly like blowing their trumpet and awakening the dead. Is kind of what's depicted there. And as always, that image evokes a message, right? In the Judgment card, we're kind of looking at the truth of a thing. It's almost like justice amplified, or justice like magnified. It's like a reckoning. We are looking at everything that we need to see. It's like following the call, shining a light on what needs to be seen and what needs to be looked at. The Judgment card is acknowledging, looking at, working with those final few things that need to be acknowledged, looked at, and taken care of before we can move into the World card. This is like an evaluation, a reflection on ourselves and the choices that we've made, the path that we've taken to get to where we are. It's like this major self-reflection. And we get to ask, like, how do I want to show up to that self-reflection, you know? It's about seeing the truth, embracing the truth, letting go of any illusions, right? It's kind of like this, it's time to get really real before we can move forward kind of energy. And I like that. I like the way that the Judgment card kind of enhances or supports the Four of Cups energy. If we're going to be sitting here with these 3 cups, and if this is where we are and we just kind of have to focus on these 3 cups, let's do it in a very Judgment energy kind of way, right? In a very honest, divinely guided and like resourced type of way. Usually the word reckoning doesn't really have a positive connotation. And I'm finding myself, maybe it's just my like natural tendency to want to kind of sit in my rose-colored glasses as much as possible. But I'm finding myself wanting to say, like, we can be in the Four of Cups and we can be in the Judgment card. We can have a reckoning. We can be really awake to what needs to be seen, even if it's uncomfortable, right? Can we do all of that with grace and self-compassion and like an open heart and a humble ego? Just knowing that this is all just a step in our path. This is all just keeping us in alignment, you know? So that's what's present for us. Our lesson this week is the Eight of Cups. This is where it might start to get a little more spicy. Again, the cup cards encourage us to touch in with the heart in some way. And, you know, I'll just cut to the chase. In the Eight of Cups, we're asked to walk away from anything that is not working. Even if that thing is bright and shiny and maybe it is kind of working, or maybe it's been working for a really long time, or maybe it would work for anybody else. But the Eight of Cups is about having the discernment, the knowing when to walk away, having trust that when we follow that call to walk away from something, even if it looks really good, even if we've been working on it forever, even if the world will think we're crazy for walking away from this thing, from these 8 cups that we've been collecting and stacking and caring for. Even if it seems crazy, even if it seems scary, it's about like having trust, following the call, if we're having the call, you know? The 8 of Cups is about having the bravery to walk away from what isn't working for you. It's a very release what doesn't serve so that more can come in, so that there's room for more to come in. So this likely doesn't mean something very concrete and external and obvious, right? It's like if I'm doing this reading for the collective, it's unlikely that each person hearing this has a job or a relationship or an apartment that they need to like end the lease on and move out of, right? That would be kind of wild. These sorts of things can come up in really subtle ways as well. The 8 of Cups can come up around subtle choices that we make. It can come up around our ruts, routines, and patterns. The 8 of Cups can come up around a certain way of communicating. Maybe there's like a communication pattern that you're being asked to like reckon with, you know, very judgment style, and walk away from it, even if it seems like it's been working. Judgment helps us have the discernment, and then the 8 of Cups helps us to walk away. We're learning how to walk away from things when it's time to walk away from things, you know, and doing so with trust. That doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean there's no fear, right? But it does mean that there's also trust. And then our anchor for the week is 10 of Swords, which doesn't feel very anchoring. When we look at the 10 of Swords, it's a very intense card. It's one of the more like scary looking cards. There's a dude who's very dead. Like he's dead. There's no question about it. There are 10 swords in this guy's back. There's blood all over. It's dark. It's nightfall, right? It's not a very positive looking card. And I'm always comforted when I remember that Soul Tarot says that especially in the swords, it's often the depictions are often more about what our brain thinks about a thing rather than the actual thing itself. So pulling the Ten of Swords does not mean you are going to be or feel betrayed. It does not mean that something is dead or is gonna die, right? Not necessarily, but it could be signaling that things feel dead, or like there's like just this sense of like hopelessness, like this sense of like being at a loss, right? There's not much to be done in this situation. There's so many swords going on. There's blood everywhere. So there's a few different ways that we can read this. I'll kind of unpack them, and then we'll explore what that might mean in terms of being an anchor for us this week. But the Ten of Swords can sometimes mean almost, kind of similar to the Eight of Cups. It can kind of be this like, hey, if something's dead, are you willing to walk away? Like, not like beating a dead horse, that phrase. Knowing when something is done. Knowing when it's time to walk away from a thing. Some of us like kind of need this like kind of overkill in order to really realize that something is dead. Something I find myself asking clients often is like, how bad does it need to get in order for you to realize that something needs to change? It's frequent that we say like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Meanwhile, there's 10 fucking swords in our back. How bad does it need to get before you'll take care of it, before you'll walk away from it? The Ten of Swords can also be about something feeling really like a betrayal, or like a backstabbing, or like this just sense of hopelessness. When there's 10 swords going on, like that just signals like a lot of brain chemistry. So when I pull the Ten of Swords, I also always kind of like to look at like how has my brain been operating? Has there been a lot of mental activity? Has there been a lot of kind of like spiraling or churning or working to try to make sense of something in a really logical, brainy way? Maybe the thing can't be made sense of, right? Like maybe we need to pull the brain out of it altogether, pull the swords out of it altogether. You can't think your way out of everything. And we start to learn that in the sword suit, starting at like the 2 kind of, but especially in like the 8, 9, and 10. Sometimes we have to kind of learn to disengage from all of the mental activity. So as an anchor, I'm kind of feeling like this is a cautionary tale to have a very careful, intentional relationship with your brain over the coming week. Notice if you're overthinking, notice if your brain is like extra activated, and remember that like if there's a million swords flying around in there, it's really hard to like make sense of any of that. So like what I want to say is like, give up trying. That's really inspiring, Melissa. Things don't make sense, so give up trying to make sense of it. I mean, it doesn't sound inspiring, but it kind of is, I guess. But like remembering that we don't have to believe the brain. You don't have to engage with the brain. You don't have to know the how and the why and the what of everything. Like maybe this week, if your brain is on overdrive, do what you can to just acknowledge that there's a lot of swords going on. Kind of see if you can like stick them in the ground in some way, and like tell yourself, I don't need to sort all of this out alone. I don't need to sort all of this out right now. I can choose how I'm engaging with my swords. If it feels hopeless, if it feels like a betrayal, it might be, right? And if you're in a Ten of Swords experience, you want to proceed very cautiously. So if things feel really hopeless, or if they feel like a betrayal, and if it's like, oh my God, they might be hopeless, it might truly be a betrayal, like I try not to make any moves based on all of that. You know what I mean? or at least like just tread carefully, be cautious, especially if the brain is activated and like in overdrive. Try not to necessarily act on that. The spread altogether, the 4 cards altogether, it's a very contemplative, evaluative spread. And the 10 of Swords signals that there might be a lot of brain chemistry going on. But also, we got 2 cup cards, which invite us to touch in with the heart, deepen our relationship with the heart. And then the Judgment card, which is ruled by Scorpio, which is another water sign. So more water energy. There might be a lot of brain chemistry going on. And there's a lot of water energy present. So see if, even if the brain is overactive, see if you can stay touched in with the heart. See if you can stay present with your body. And even though the 8 of Cups has this message of like being willing to walk away from what isn't working, the other 3 cards are also very like slow down and evaluate and just kind of look. They're not very action oriented cards. So I'm just finding myself wanting to re-emphasize that if the brain is overactive, if there's a lot of brain chemistry going on, and when that happens, we can kind of scramble to need an answer or need a fix or need some sort of direction. We need to change something. We need to do something. I need to let go of something or start something. When there's a ton of brain chemistry, we tend to want to get out of it, which means that we do something, right? We act on something. And if it's feeling really clear to you that there is an action that you need to do, and it is truly aligned with your head, your heart, and your hands, all 3 in alignment, then like proceed with caution, but like go for it, mama. Like, you know better than anybody else. But overall, I'm just getting this sense that I need to, really emphasize that this might be just a week to like tread lightly, go slowly, engage with yourself very carefully, stay open to what needs to be illuminated to you, trust that what you need to see will be shown to you, right? And see if you can do that Judgment work, that 4 of Cups work, that 8 of Cups work. See if you can do all of that in a way where your swords are kind to you and like not killing you, I hope that makes sense. And I hope that this resonates. It's like it's not the most rosy peachy spread that I've ever had, that's for sure. And I don't think it's like necessarily going to be bad. I don't think it's necessarily going to be hard, but again, like that word reckoning, I don't think it's not commonly used in a very optimistic, positive kind of way. So please let me know what stands out to you. Let me know if this feels relevant or present for you as the week unfolds, and I'd love to know if it's helpful. On that note, let's move into the expansive astrology for the week. It's tarot week. So we'll start out talking about the Justice card, the ruling card for Libra. Let's begin with what the Justice card is not, because it's commonly seen as like some sort of signal that things are imbalanced, or some sort of decision needs to be made, or things that were once unfair are going to become fair and just, or vice versa, that like is some sort of injustice may be happening, right? People kind of will pull the Justice card and they'll say like some sort of decision needs to be made, or they'll say if it's upright that things will be balanced and fair and work out in your favor, or if it's reversed they'll say that the things are going to be unfair and unjust, or that like you must rectify some sort of wrong, that there's like a fear mongering that happens commonly in tarot and with the Justice card, that like karma's gonna get you, like you reap what you sow, which is true. You do reap what you sow, and everything does come back around, and that is true. And like Libra and the Justice card help us to see the truth. But it is not some sort of magical card that restores justice, and it's not some sort of signal that you have made a mistake, or that karma's going to get you, or that you need to restore balance in some way, or make some sort of decision. It's not quite, that's just not, that's just not it. That's not the full story. But what justice does say, what it does assist us in, is realizing that everything does come back around, that there is a truth. In the Justice card, we're learning how to be with what is, rather than just what we wish could be. We're learning radical acceptance. We're learning to look at the truth. And it helps us kind of evaluate, like doing that work helps us evaluate how we can be a means for change, how we can bring about more fairness or balance. In justice, we are opening our eyes to seeing things as they are so that we can move forward. It's an invitation to acknowledge what is rather than what we wish there was, so that we can truly see what is out of balance. It's helping us to see what is out of balance and helping us to acknowledge what is, so that we can tend to what's really here and find balance, find restoration, find justice. So moving out of Virgo season into Libra season, we can kind of see how Virgo and its gift of being with what is, and like the Hermit's gift of being with what is being illuminated to us, and finding wisdom from there. We move from the Hermit into the Wheel of Fortune, which kind of builds on the Hermit, and then we see how the Justice card builds on all of that even further. Like, we start practicing in the Hermit card, and we start practicing in Virgo season how to look at what is, how to find comfort doing that, how to find comfort being with what is being illuminated to us. And then we're moving into Justice energy, where we're really looking at the state of things, which isn't comfortable. It's really fucking not comfortable at all, right? Because this includes looking at how we may be perpetuating or contributing to injustice, and how all the ways that injustice has been a part of our own lives and relationships. It's really uncomfortable. So it's a good thing that we've had some practice in Virgo season and with the Hermit, so that we can kind of tolerate that discomfort, hopefully a little more, and do this work. It's necessary work. Finding radical acceptance. I keep saying that. Radical acceptance. A willingness to stop fighting, stop resisting, stop denying the truth. An ability and a willingness to accept, to be with the things in life that are not fair, the things in life that are unjust, the things in life that are fucked. Pardon me, but how else am I going to say it? How do we deal with that? How do we deal with that, right? And acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean complacency. Having radical acceptance simply means that we're not fighting it, we're not denying it, we're not resisting it, we're with it. We're looking at it like we're in a courtroom, the judge and the jury, presenting all of the evidence, all the expert witness testimony, right? Going down to every last detail, the truth of every last detail, right? Like, that's what justice is all about. And this is important, right? Because we have to do this. We have to start with what's true, and we have to start with what is actually here in order to move into what's possible, in order to move into where we would like to be. Especially when there may never be an explanation as to the why of it all. How do we deal with the times when we find ourselves asking, why did this fucked up thing happen to me? Why did this injustice happen to me? What could the purpose have possibly been? Being a human means grappling with those questions often. And people swoop in with things like, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. And it all happens for a reason, and it's all meant to build you into who you're meant to be. And, like, well-meaning. And I like to believe, the latter, at least, and we can kind of find comfort there and rest in all of that, and also truly be in the justice card, which means like looking at the fact that you're right. Like, it was unfair. It shouldn't have happened. It was fucked up. You didn't need it. You didn't want it. It shouldn't have been. That's part of it. And it is. It was. It did. It did happen. So we can fight it, deny it, ignore it, question it, be pissed about it, or we can accept it. And again, that does not mean approving of it, but we can embrace what power we do have over situations, right? And we can kind of figure, like, where can we create change here? How can we make it even just a little bit easier to live with this? How can we be agents of justice, equity, empowerment, balance for ourselves, for our families, for our children, for our communities, and for all beings, right? And especially those who have been disenfranchised, those who can't do for themselves, who can't kind of do this kind of work and fighting and bringing about change, justice, equity, empowerment, and balance, right? Really centering those. And this does not necessarily mean that you are a person who begins fostering children and begins a nonprofit and dedicates your life to law and justice. Like, you don't have to run for president, right? This can simply mean being a little less of an asshole during arguments with your partner. And welcome back to the Lindsay Mack fan cast. Lindsay Mack says, quote, "Justice card can mean addressing a circumstance where abuse or violence is passed down through your family line, and you're the one it stops with. That's justice work, because you have to confront the fact that there was that in order to stop it in yourself." Unquote. Looking at what is so that we can get to where we want to be. And like with the Justice card, the Tower card, the Judgment card. The tarot is never asking us to do work that we're not ready for or capable of. I always remind myself of that like whatever is coming forward for me, I am equipped and ready to look at and handle. So like if you're a person who really feels the climate crisis and kind of panics about the climate crisis, rightfully, the Justice card helps us to be gentle with ourselves and our expectations of ourselves. Like that's part of the work. Like we may wish that we could take on big oil and like make recycling what it needs to be and really create some sort of change in this crisis. And the Justice card has us looking at what is, accepting where you are and what you can do, what you are capable of, and do what tending you need to do for yourself in order to be able to sleep at night. It doesn't all fall on your shoulders, So that's part of it. Realizing what is yours and what is not. Justice exists in those times we need or want to throw a tantrum or wallow. It's very like life isn't fair. It's very, you get what you get. You're in what you're in. You can't get out of it. There's no use arguing with it. And remembering that we can affect change. We can empower ourselves. And the only way that that's ever going to happen is if we're with the reality, the truth of what is. The more we try to get out of a thing, the more the thing is here. The more we're in it. We start learning that in the Hermit. It's true in the Justice card. So here, we're embracing our power to adjust by noticing where things are out of balance, like the scales on the card. Noticing where things change and tip, we're able to maintain our center with that. And this might not necessarily mean restoring balance and making things even and comfortable for us again. It might not mean making things just. Like you can let go of that expectation. But what it does mean is moving forward from where we are with what is in our scales, and doing so in a way that is helpful and positive and just and balanced for you, given what you've been handed, given what is in your scales. Again, that might not necessarily mean fairness, but it means being with what is. And this can be huge in terms of generational trauma. I had a period of time this summer where I felt haunted by the Justice card. It was coming up a lot for me, and I finally realized that it was coming up around coming to terms with the fact that like I really shouldn't be drinking right now, So it comes up around some really tough stuff. When my brain was starting to kind of be like, well, maybe I can dabble. Maybe a trip to the brewery now and then isn't the worst thing. And Justice comes up to be like, is that the truth? You sure about that? It came to the point where it would fall out of my deck, or, I would pull it and I'd be like, I know, okay, I know, I get it. So really, it's like such an ally. It like reminds us of the truth. It recenters us with the truth. It kind of helps us, if we're paying attention, it helps us dissolve disillusion. So we can kind of ask, And this is the theme for Libra season for the next 4 weeks of your life, my love. We can ask, is there something that I'm being called to look at and understand that I don't want to, that I don't want to be true, that I don't want to acknowledge? What am I resisting accepting? What am I resisting the truth of? And where can I better step into my power and be even more of an agent for change? Where is it possible for me to create change? And that's my take on the Justice card. And thank goodness we also have some influence from the Empress. Because Libra energy almost feels like really kind of serious, right? But then we have this Venusian influence. Venus is here and the Empress is here. And I feel like that is just so beautiful, such a beautiful way for Libra to, ironically, it almost feels like it balances out the serious work that Libra does, because Venus is about beauty and love and pleasure and the divine feminine. And I feel like Venus, the Empress, the influence of that energy helps us bring this difficult and necessary work of cardinal air, of justice, of saying hard truths. And we'll get into that with when we talk about the Queen of Swords. But I feel like the Empress and Venus helps bring the beauty and the friendship and the connection and the sensuality and intimacy to Libra energy. Libra could use it, with peace and love. I say that with peace and love. Let's talk about the Empress. I believe it's Rachel Pollack who says that the Empress is like the High Priestess. If the High Priestess is about the divine feminine spiritually, and the Empress is about the divine feminine in the material world. So there's these vibes of creativity, abundance, fertility, female authority, motherhood, nurturing, and they can be all of that. And there's definitely those vibes here. And let's expand our understanding of what all of that actually means, right? Because what the Empress has a gift of, and what she can teach us how to do, is expanding our threshold for receiving. She helps us become like an artist of love, an artist of pleasure. The Empress teaches us that we have to position ourselves to being available to receiving what brings us pleasure. We have to work to open ourselves to pleasure. And it can be really challenging to receive. It can be really triggering to be in pleasure. It can feel unsafe to receive. It can be one of the hardest things that we can do. There are all kinds of sticky, difficult, static messaging around what it means to receive, right? Phrases like spoiled brat and high maintenance and snowflake. It's really looked down upon. And I think that's kind of silly. So let's see what we can do to reclaim what it means to receive, to reclaim what it means to prioritize pleasure. The Empress brings our attention to our relationship with nourishment, with receiving nourishment, and with cultivating pleasure, and with staying open in our heart, and with staying in alignment, staying in empowerment. And we get to explore how we express affection and how we enjoy beauty. We get to explore what it means to romanticize your life, how to step into a sense of richness where you are, right? Cultivating all of this, being with all of this sense of richness, this like romanticizing yourself and your life and everything you have in the courtroom of the Justice card. I love that. And Soul Tarot reminds us through the Empress, right? The Empress reminds us that if we are unavailable to receive, beauty has nowhere to go because it's there. It's there. We have access to pleasure at our fingertips. I always say with the Empress when we're kind of having this discussion that it's kind of difficult, not impossible, but really pretty difficult to have an orgasm or to enjoy an orgasm that we're not willing to have, that we're not open to having. Libra, Venus, the Empress helps us in opening and expanding what we're comfortable with receiving. It's an invitation to root down into receptivity. And this is so hard. And it requires like reclamation and healing and intentional, deep, true permission, because we have these deep-rooted beliefs about what it means to receive, what it means to take. We have some really deep-rooted beliefs about what it means to have pleasure, be in pleasure, want pleasure, seek pleasure. So as we're kind of considering all of this, you're sitting in the courtroom of the Justice card. This includes looking at what are your deep-rooted beliefs about what it means to take, or what it means to need, or what it means to seek pleasure, want pleasure, need pleasure. How are your needs and wants and desires met in childhood? And how do you meet them for yourself in adulthood? There can be a lot of stickiness there, right? Lots of invitations to permission ourselves and to undo the stickiness that might be there. And like realizing that if you're an adult, we get to decide what we receive. Like, we don't need permission or proof of worthiness like from outside of us. And what we've been given is not a reflection of what we deserve. I'm going to like say it louder for the people in the back. What you've been given is not a reflection of what you deserve. If you're available to practice receiving, intentional, careful receiving, which includes some pretty fierce, radical boundaries, which again, Libra helps us with, the Queen of Swords helps us with. If we're able to practice those things, you will become so much better at giving. If we were more present in our receiving, wouldn't we be so much nicer to be around? Wouldn't we be so much more effective parents and people, whatever you are, whatever you do, however you show up? If you were really present in receiving and cultivating and being in and with and crafting and creating pleasure, like, that's only positive. It's only going to help you. I don't know why we don't prioritize this more. It makes me mad. And the other thing to realize is that if your relationship with receiving were better, you wouldn't need to take so much. And there's a big difference between taking and receiving. And if our needs are going unmet, it puts us in a position, whether consciously or not, whether intentionally or not, puts us in a position of needing to take, because the needs are there one way or another, whether we're tending them intentionally or not. The need is there, and we're going to figure out how to get the need met. And sometimes that means really disempowered, panicked, grasping for our needs to be met. And we can learn how to meet our needs and have our needs met from a place of empowered receiving rather than disempowered, panicked taking. So, we're in this season where there's a clear invitation to focus in on being present to receiving what is actually here. Surrendering to receiving what is actually here. Romanticize your life. There's so much medicine all around us. And it is yours for the taking. It is available to you. It is right at your fingertips. You can create it. You can engage with it. It is yours for the taking. It's yours. Receive it. Find it. Cultivate it everywhere. We can ask ourselves, how might we deepen our receiving? What are some ancestral messaging that has been programmed into you about receiving? Is it okay to receive? Is it okay to need? Is it okay to share? What stories exist in your family and your culture and communities around receiving and taking and sharing? We can begin to explore. Again, supported by the Queen of Swords, which we'll talk about next, but exploring what are you open to receiving? What do you want to receive? And additionally, where does your threshold for comfort with that end? Where is it easier for to receive, and then where did you come up against an edge with that? Where is it not so easy for you to receive? I love me some Empress energy. Well, let's briefly talk about the swords, because the swords are air energy and Libra is air energy, and it can be intense. Air energy, the swords, it can be intense. The element of air represents the mind, the brain chemistry, and communication. How we communicate that brain chemistry. There's always movement happening in air energy, right? And we know that there's always movement happening in the brain, in the mind. There's always something to learn or do or explore, right? And in the Suit of Swords, we're learning what it means to befriend the brain, how to have a brain in a way that is helpful and in a way that helps support our expansion and our alignment. Getting curious about the way our brain works, the way we think, so that we can stop identifying with it so damn much. So that we can drive the car with the brain in the passenger seat or even the back seat. This is where we learn that our thoughts and our beliefs are not necessarily the truth. And feelings are not facts. The story that the brain tells us is often much worse than reality. And we see that illustrated on the cards where there's a black sky and 10 freaking swords in this dude's back. It's the story that the brain tells us is often much more intense than reality. And we have a responsibility to check our narratives. Doing so can really set us free. It can be helpful to acknowledge that the brain's purpose It's an expert at this. It's an expert at keeping us safe. And the way it keeps us safe is by keeping things predictable, keeping things the same. Because the brain feels really threatened in a state of change. It feels threatened when it doesn't know what the heck is going on, right? It feels safe when it knows exactly what to predict. So it doesn't want us to evolve. It doesn't want us to do big, scary things. It doesn't want us to step into the unknown. It wants to keep repeating the known past. We can begin to free ourselves of the known past and find some semblance of comfort, or at least a willingness to be in the discomfort of stepping into the unknown. We can learn how to do this when we move through the Suit of Swords, when we learn how to befriend the brain, when we learn how our brain is operating, how it is keeping us small and the same and in contraction in the face of expansion. Right? We can learn how to say, my brain is telling me this. My brain is inviting me to believe this. My brain is doing this thing. And choosing, thanks brain, but I'm going to take a rain check on what you're saying and try this other thing because we're safe. It's all about having a relationship with the brain, hearing it and not necessarily believing everything it says, hearing it and sometimes ignoring it in an empowered way, right? In a helpful way. Because ultimately, the brain is in its highest service when it is serving the soul. And when we're not careful, when we're not intentional, when we don't do this work, that's not the brain's default, right? That's not where the brain wants to go. We have to do some convincing to get it there. Now, the Queen of Swords, the Queen of air energy, the Queen of having a brain, the Queen of communication. She is Libra energy. She is beauty. She is grace. She is Libra energy. She's the queen of saying a hard thing and setting a boundary. She is not afraid to do it. She's not afraid to say a hard thing. She's not afraid to assert herself. She's not afraid to advocate. It's how she rules her kingdom. And in the Pamela Coleman Smith illustration, we see she's sitting there with a big old sword straight up and down right in front of her face. You can't get to her face without passing by this giant sword. There's this huge boundary. Massive boundary. And also she's extending her arm out past the sword. Her other arm is open, palm up, extended past the sword. So there's just this sense that she's not cutting people off. She's not blocking people out. There is a firm, solid, unmistakable boundary. And also an openness, a willingness, a friendliness. This is the energy that helps us cultivate the courage to disappoint people and to do so with a gentleness and openness, right? I'm thinking, I'll just say it, I'm thinking specifically of my sister who I hope wouldn't mind calling her out a little bit here on a public forum, but she's a person who's not afraid to disappoint people. She has the courage to disappoint people. She'll hold her big old sword up right in front of her face. And so she's the type of person who could learn how to do that while also keeping an arm outreached, an openness, a friendliness. She's an Aries, so there's kind of a burn the bridge. That's how you handle that sort of thing. But the Queen of Swords helps us handle that sort of thing, helps us maybe burn the bridge, but then the Queen of Swords also will rebuild the bridge with you in a more structurally sound way that is more beneficial for both of us. Queen of Swords energy. Learning how to effectively and kindly disappoint people. Cardinal air, the Queen of Swords, Libra energy. It's a very welcoming energy. Learning how to keep firm boundaries with love that are balanced in both thought and emotion. So, I think that's all I have for you for the expansive astrology this week. I hope it helps. I hope it's inspiring. I hope it furthers your understanding of Libra season and what the invitations are for the next couple of weeks. Now for this week's astrological forecast. I'll share what you can expect in the stars for the coming week. Remember, this is all in Eastern Standard Time, and you can find it printed in the show notes. I'll be sharing some of the more major transits, as well as when the moon will be void of course. Not expecting you to overly structure your life around these things, but more so that you can just be aware of what is going on and be observant of how these things may be impacting you as they unfold. So, starting with Tuesday the 27th, the day of this upload, the moon is void of course all afternoon from 12:21 p.m. until it enters Scorpio at 7:15 p.m. Thursday the 29th, Venus enters Libra at 3:49 a.m. And then the moon goes void of course in the evening at 5:20 p.m. It goes direct again on Friday when it enters Sagittarius at 12:03 a.m. Saturday, October 1st, the moon is void of course starting at 5:46 p.m. And then it goes direct on Sunday the 2nd when it enters Capricorn at 3:38 a.m. Also on Sunday the 2nd, Mercury goes direct at 5:07 a.m. And we have the waxing half moon in the evening at 8:14 p.m. Halfway to the full moon. Already. That's crazy. Monday the 3rd, the moon is void of course starting at 11:49 p.m. And it goes direct on Tuesday the 4th when it enters Aquarius at 6:20 a.m. Also, Tuesday the 4th will be episode 22, where I'll be talking about the 7th house of relationships. It's one of my favorite topics in expansive astrology, talking about relationships, how we get our needs met in relationships, how we show up in relationships. I love it. So I hope to see you here next week. I also hope to see you at the next moon meetup, which happens on Sunday, October 9th. We'll be celebrating the full moon in Aries. Also, just a humble reminder, if moon meetups are something that you're interested in attending on a regular basis, or if you would like a monthly tarot reading from me in your inbox, you can find more details for the Meet Your Magic monthly membership, my newest offering that I'm so excited about and so thankful to those of you who are engaging with. The first round of tarot readings will be going out like this weekend. So I'm really celebrating that and so excited about that. So thankful for that. You know where to find more information. I would be honored to have you support the podcast in that way, and hopefully you will feel supported as well. Anyway, that's enough of that. That's all I have for you this week. As always, thank you so much for being here. Please let me know how I can support you. I hope this feels supportive for you. I love you so much. I will see you next week. Take really good care of yourself. Bye. Now, before you go, let me keep your ear for just a moment. This week's episode is brought to you by www.theselfcarewitch.com, my bread and butter, where you can find more information on my current courses, offerings, and other fun ways to connect with myself and yourself. If you enjoyed this episode and you dig what I'm doing here, please subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and leave a review. It helps so much. And if you'd like to connect with me, head to theselfcarewitch.com. I'd truly love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.